There was a cartoon that I saw recently. It was of Moses, and Moses had just thrown down the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, and they were lying in rubble at his feet, and he was looking like horrified that he'd broken the Ten Commandments. And this voice of God came down and said, "Moses, you broke all 10 commandments at the same time, and all you can say is, oops." We make mistakes. Things happen. Some of the mistakes are bigger than other mistakes. But as Swami would often say, God made us, God made the pitfalls, and He is not surprised when we fall into them. Things happen. And He didn't make the pitfalls so that He could gloat over us and say, "Oh, you fell in, I've snared you, now you'll burn in hellfire for all eternity." No, He made the pitfalls so that we could learn how not to fall in them. So we could learn to make the right choices so that we didn't go down into the pit, that we could grow and evolve and change and transcend those pitfalls. And we have many challenges in our lives, but those challenges are not made to torture us. I don't know if you can remember back when you were little and first grade, had the daunting task of facing addition and subtraction. And you may have been scared. You may have thought, "I'll never get this. It's too confusing. It's too overwhelming." You may have been scared to death to take the test. You may have failed the test. But eventually, you grew, you learned it, you got it, or you got a calculator and you learned how to use that. But eventually, you transcended, and now you can add and subtract. It's just one of those things you can do, and it's helpful, it's useful. And you don't think about all the drama involved and how you had to learn that and work at it. And our challenges are bigger now. They can be life and death. They can be pain and loss and misery, ill health, separation, all the problems of marriage and job and family and children and money. But none of those pitfalls, none of those challenges are there to torture us. They are there to help us. Just like the addition and subtraction test was there to help us learn something. And so we are here to learn. Many years ago, we had a spring fair at Ananda with music and dance and games, and we created an obstacle course with a rope swing over a little gully and, climbing up different things, and it was a great obstacle course. And because Master said there are no obstacles, there are only opportunities, we called our obstacle course an opportunity course. So think of the challenges that face you every day, not as obstacles, but as opportunities. Have a spirit of adventure. There's a joke that a friend gave me years ago. We still refer to this. So it's a dog and a cat. Sorry. It's the season. So a dog and a cat receive their food from their owner. And the dog goes, "Oh boy, my favorite, dog food." And the cat goes, "The same thing every day. They're trying to kill me." And the cat sees all the conspiracy theories around why they get this cat food every day. And the dog just goes, "Oh boy, dog food, my favorite." So we can approach life and see our challenges in that same way. Oh good, I get to learn something. I get to change. I get to elevate my consciousness beyond this delusion of matter. I get to transcend the ego. Here's something biting me. Oh, must be my ego. The ego, Yogananda said, is the soul, that child of light, identified with the body, with this material consciousness. And all the challenges of our lives are meant to help break that down, to free us, to liberate us. Swami Kriyananda one time, this was back when he had just started the Ananda community, he had tremendous financial responsibilities. He was holding the mortgage for all that land up there, and he was pretty much single-handedly trying to pay for it. So he had a grueling schedule of driving to many cities every week, giving classes. And this one day, he had to leave to drive to a distant city to give yet another class, and he was exhausted. So he laid down on his bed for a few minutes and just collapsed. And he thought to himself, there are so many things weighing on me. And he started to list them in his mind. And every time he thought of one, he'd go, "Oh no, there's that. And then there's this. And then there's that. I just can't do all these things." And then he had a liberating thought. He said to himself, "I can't, but God can. I can't do it, but God can do it. And God has given me all these things to work with." And believe me, Swami had health challenges from the time he was born. Serious things. Cancer, colitis, diabetes. We used to take him to the doctor and pull out this sheaf of papers of the medical history, and the doctor would just sort of look from it to Swami, surprised he was still alive. But Swami, in that moment, lying on his bed, just said, "This is what God has given me to do. Let me say yes to it. Let me embrace it. Let me pull up willingness to face these things." And so he went over the list again in his mind. Oh, yes, yes, I will take this on. I will accept this challenge. I will give my heart. Really, it's saying yes to life. And Swami would often refer to that. Say yes to life. And so he got up from his bed full of energy. He drove to his class, gave his class, drove all the way home. And he said he stayed up for many hours, catching up on his workload and feeling free and energetic and full of life. This is what we need to do with all the challenges that face us. Give them our hearts. Put your will into it and realize that we are children of light. The limitations that we face are not our true reality. And if we want to draw God more into our lives, practice the teachings of meditation, not just haphazardly once or twice here and there, but give them your full attention. Give them your heart. Give them your devotion. Practice them with faith, with trust in God, and love other people as reflections of God's light. Let go of criticism and anger and all the things that separate you from other people. Just bless them as reflections of God's light. And that beautiful chant that we sang, listen, listen, this is God's call to the devotee who wants to come back home to him. God is saying, listen to my heart song, the sound of Om, and remember, I will never forget you. I will never forsake you. God is always there, waiting for us to call on His strength to help us in everything we are doing.
There is a neurological component to what Nirmala was saying about meditation, and I've just been studying this recently. It's really quite interesting how the brain is organized in such a way that we can energize the part that is close to the forehead. We typically describe that as the point between the eyebrows, but there's a whole prefrontal cortex of our brain that is evolutionally, if that's a word, speaking, is relatively new in our sort of progression as human beings. It's separated into several parts, and when we energize it, we are drawing energy away from a different part of the brain, which is the limbic system, which is the fight or flight, the sort of, I have to survive, I have to do something now that'll save my life, or I have to fight, or I have to do something intense in that way, that focuses our energy down on the body. But if that part of the brain is constantly shouting, chiming, yelling, whatever, it keeps us in this state of thinking about ourselves, as Nirmala was saying, as separate from other people, separate from life, separate from the light, in fact. Meditation, on the other hand, energizes this prefrontal cortex, and which is divided into three areas, I am learning. The part that says, I will, meaning I am willing and I am planning and I am intending and energizing the part that goes forward. It also has a part that says, I won't. And the I won't part is quite important too, because it's the part that says, I won't take that cake from the bakery shelf like we sang earlier today. I won't, because that's just not a good idea. Even though yes, sure, and it's sweet and soft and a treat, sure too, but it's bad karma if I take it. And it's that part that says it controls, and this affirmation today on self-control is a helpful one to energize that part. And then there's a third part of the prefrontal cortex, and this one may sound a little counterintuitive. This is the part that's described as the I want part. But it's not I want in the sense of personal desire for immediate gratification. In fact, it's actually quite the opposite. It's the I want part for the future. I want for the ultimate goal, for the challenge. I will says, let me do the more difficult thing right now. I won't says, let me not do the easy thing right now, like take the cake or the, whatever it may be, the immediate gratification. The I want part is saying, let me look to the future. And this differs, our prefrontal cortex differs from those of animals who typically, you won't, if you feed your goldfish, you will not typically find your goldfish putting aside some of it for retirement. It's uncommon, let's just say. They don't sort of think in those terms. And we, by energizing that part, we come to identify with it. And that's the part that meditation and the repetition of meditation teaches us, oh, I am actually part of that light. That's not just something that's out there, it's in here, it's inside of me. There's several interesting stories that I want to tell. One of them is a little bit shocking. This is a spiritual teacher who had a normal life, a job and a responsible life, but he also had spiritual students. And one day he was in ecstasy and in a very, very high state of realization in that moment, but he was also talking to the students, and he was saying, I am God, worship me, worship me. And they were, it was a little off-putting, frankly speaking. That wasn't quite what they wanted to hear. After he came down from that state and was kind of interacting with them in a more normal way, in his normal working personality, they told him about that because he didn't remember it. And he said, listen, if that happens again, you take your knives and you kill me, okay? Okay, so the very next day, what happens? He goes into the divine state. This time his words are a little different, but it's the same effect, basically. He said, inside this cloak is only God. Well, they'd been sharpening up their knives. They were ready, they were ready for this. So some of them went after him and started to try to stab him. And what did they find? They couldn't stab him. They were stabbing themselves. And they injured themselves in so doing. And the others who did it a little bit only got a little bit injured. And some of the other ones who didn't do it at all, but were actually trying to tune into what is he expressing? What state is he actually in? Ended up feeling some of the bliss that he was in that had him saying those words. Now, in our tradition, we don't say the words, I am God, or the little ego can't say, I am God. The little ego can say, God has become this little ego. I am one of the little waves in this vast ocean. But Christ could say, I and my Father are one. I am not just this body and this personality. I'm one with the cosmos, one with the infinite light that created this whole universe. And that is part of our destiny. And the Bible passage today gives us this helpful reminder that no one went back up to heaven who didn't come from there in the first place. There's another story of a man who was he was part of a wealthy family and grew up with, he was, you might say, although they didn't use this term, a little bit of a spoiled kid because he grew up in a wealthy home and he didn't really have to work for it. And when his parents died, he inherited the home, which was lovely and well appointed, as well as quite a lot of money. Well, not appreciating the value of what he had inherited because he hadn't had to earn any of it himself, he squandered the wealth part. The home was still there, but he had used up all the wealth and partying and having fun with his friends and so forth, and was now left without any money. And this realization hit him that he really had to do something about this. And one night he went to sleep and he had a dream. And in this dream, and it was something of a superconscious dream, he had the understanding that there was a place in Egypt. He was in the city of Baghdad. There was a place in Egypt that he had to go. And if he went there and he found the right place, and he saw it very clearly in his dream, and he dug at this spot, he would find a treasure. and his wealth would be restored to him. And so he journeyed to Egypt. In the vernacular of the time, it would have been sort of hitchhiking because he didn't have any money to pay for the trip. So he arrived in Egypt penniless. He was hungry. He didn't have anything to eat. His only way of getting something to eat and sustain himself was to beg for it. So that's what he was doing in the daytime. And he was looking for this place, and he was really struggling to find it because he hadn't, it wasn't like there were street signs pointing him to it. He just had a visual of what it was supposed to look like. Well, one night came, and he was still out on the street. And there had been robberies in that city. And so the authorities were going around collecting anybody who was out sort of roaming around, assuming that they were bandits robbing people. Well, he was not a bandit. He was just a beggar. But he got rounded up with everybody else. And he went to tell his story to the official. And he told the whole thing. He told it from, childhood to I spent it all to I had this dream and I came here. And the authority looked at him and he said, "I believe you. And I will tell you why I believe you. Because I also had a dream. I had a dream like yours. I dreamt that there is a street in the city of Baghdad. When I was to go to that street, and there is a house," and he named the exact house that this guy lived in. "And I was to go into that house and I would find my treasure." And he said, "But I have family and I have job and I can't get away." Meanwhile, this guy is like taking notes, thinking, that's interesting. I just came from there. And he didn't explain all that, but he went back to that home, fully confident that he would find some treasure in that place. We are a little bit like that guy from Baghdad. We have journeyed. We've squandered the wealth of the infinite of inner peace and inner joy to one degree or another. And we have journeyed away looking for it someplace else, only to be steered back to where we came from. And that's part of the journey. That's part of the process. And there's no shame in it. And it's very important as we understand the we are children of the light on a deeper and deeper level, we realize that all of the things that hold us back, all of the little messages that play inside of us, all of the things that we identify with, on one level or another, we let them go. And we embrace that light of who we are, in fact, truly. I remember I've had, over the decades at Ananda, I've had a number of careers, and it was interesting to watch the process of those things evolve over a period of time. My first one was building, and I had to learn how to use tools and to build walls and to construct homes. And initially, I didn't know any of those things. So I started off and I became a carpenter. And then with a little more time, a contractor. And with a little more time, a builder. And that was all very, very positive because it was like an identification moving away from essentially nothing towards a positive flow of energy. There came a time after that where I continued in the building trade after living in Italy and teaching and so forth. I came back and did the building trade a bit in Seattle and again at Ananda Village, where that identification was no longer serving. The act of building no longer meant, I am a builder by trade, by definition, because it was too narrow of a box. And all of us at one time or another, to one degree or another, will find that whatever the action leads to that identification, but we don't have to hold it. We don't have to live in the identification. We don't have to be, in other words, we don't have to be limited by it. While it's positive, while it's affirmative, that's wonderful. But then comes a time where, no, I'm more than that. I am larger. I am deeper. I can't be bound by just that. And we would see that with Swamiji. Swamiji could have said, I lead, therefore I am a leader. I sing, therefore I am a singer. I compose, therefore I am a composer. Or I write, therefore I'm a writer. In fact, I sometimes think that he did all of those things just so we could all see you can do so many things without saying I am the thing at the end of it. And it helps us to realize, and when we meditate, coming back to meditation, when we go through that process, we could say, oh, I'm a meditator, or I'm a yogi, or whatever, but it comes a certain point and we realize, no, I'm not even that. It's positive up to a point, and then it comes to where, no, it's holding me back. I am thy light. I am thy joy. I am what words can no longer even express. That becomes our self-definition, because it's a self-definition of no definition. It's beyond any definition. So take the definitions where you find them and where they're helpful, but then when they cease to be helpful, move on. Spring comes tomorrow morning early. Today is the Sunday closest to spring. And in the spring, we typically want to clean out the house, clean out the cobwebs, clean out whatever it is. I don't quite know why winter is associated with needing to get cleaned up from. Maybe just because we're inside a lot and it's time to open the windows and get the fresh air moving through the house. But let us do it with our consciousness too. Clean up the old attitudes, things that have stuck to us, old messages that we were given as children perhaps, saying, oh, you can't do that, or, oh, little boys don't cry, oh, that's not ladylike, or whatever it may be that holds us to a sense of, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not spiritual enough. A few weeks ago, Ananda was listing out certain shoulds that we carry around. I should meditate. And you can think more positively in terms of, what must I do? What is so in tune with my highest nature that I must follow it? Because that will be truth. That will be the truth of your being on a deep, deep level. And it will not have a repercussion behind it. It will not lead you back to old patterns and repeating lessons that have not quite been learned. So let us bring fresh energy through our consciousness in meditation, yes, but in everything that we do. In every way, let us open to the light of God, and we will become one with that light.